coins once thought ordinary but now worth tens of thousands. Hidden minting flaws and rare errors turned these cents into collector gold. Stay tuned as we reveal what makes them so valuable and why the coin world is buzzing. In 1939, the United States stood on the uneasy edge of global transformation. Europe had already descended into the early stages of World War II, and while America maintained its neutrality, the tension rippled across its borders. On home soil, Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal programs continued to push the country out of the Great Depression, one job, one paycheck at a time. Amidst these turbulent shifts, the U.S. Mint quietly fulfilled its duty, producing millions of coins for everyday commerce. Among them was the humble Lincoln wheat cent, unchanged and designed for decades, yet quietly bearing the mark of its time, struck in 3 facilities, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The 1939 Lincoln cent looked no different to the average citizen. With the iconic bust of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the twin wheat ears flanking the denomination on the reverse, the cent served its function without fanfare. But as with any mass production effort conducted by human hands and aging machines, errors found their way into the final product. And in 1939, one of those errors would go unnoticed for decades, tucked away into drawers, forgotten in cigar boxes, passed through generations without a second thought. It wasn't until the spring of 2004 that Robert, a retired machinist from Pennsylvania and part-time coin enthusiast, stumbled across a box of old change left behind by his grandfather. The box was a simple, dust-covered tin marked, "War Years." Robert had seen it countless times before, but something about that day pushed him to finally open it. Inside were dozens of wheat pennies, most heavily worn. But one coin, a 1939 Lincoln cent from Philadelphia, caught his eye, not for its gleam, but for its strange texture around the date. Under magnification, the oddity revealed itself. The numbers 1 and 9 of the date appeared distorted, as though stamped twice. At first, Robert thought it might be damage. But the doubling was too precise, too clean. He moved on to examine the word "liberty." The same doubling effect emerged. Each letter seemed to echo itself, just faintly, in a shadowy outline trailing beside the originals. Robert's heart began to race. He turned the coin over and saw something else. On the reverse, 1 cent also bore signs of doubling, especially the O and E. Now intrigued beyond casual curiosity, Robert compared it to other 1939 cents in the box. None showed these anomalies. That night, he consulted his modest library of numismatic references, scanning page after page on double dies and minting irregularities. One listing mentioned a rare 1939 double die obverse and reverse, one of the most elusive variants from that decade, with only a few confirmed examples. His hands trembled. Could he really be holding such a specimen? Days later, Robert submitted the coin for authentication and grading. When the results returned, the message was clear: genuine 1939 Lincoln wheat cent, double die obverse and reverse, mint state condition. A rare variety verified, and one that had barely surfaced in decades. Collectors across forums lit up when news of the find broke. Some questioned the grade, others the legitimacy, but photographs quickly silenced the skeptics. The doubling was undeniable, especially on the "Liberty" inscription and the reverse denomination. As word spread, other collectors dug through their stashes in hopes of discovering similar treasures. A few surfaced, but none with the sharpness and clarity of Robert's example. Its condition was nearly pristine, suggesting it had been placed in storage shortly after minting. The market responded with fascination. While 1939 cents were common, this error made the ordinary extraordinary. The coin's value, once negligible, began its quiet climb. Private offers came in, $800, then $1,500. Robert held firm. By 2010, auction houses began listing similar examples, lesser in quality, but still rare. Prices edged upward, hitting $3,000 in some cases. But Robert's coin remained unchallenged in clarity. Experts noted the telltale doubling on "In God We Trust," the slight spread on the S in states, and even minor doubling on the wheat stalks themselves, a detail almost imperceptible without high magnification. Then came the unexpected twist. A numismatic researcher published a paper proposing that this specific doubling was not merely an accident of die production, but the result of a transitional die being reused after initial reworking. During that period, the mint had begun experimenting with die polishing and retooling methods to extend die life and reduce costs. In this case, a partially repolished die may have re-entered production before the errors were fully corrected. This theory, if confirmed, would make Robert's coin not just a double die, but a transitional artifact from a key technological shift within the mint itself. Suddenly, the coin wasn't just rare, it was historic. A symbol of the changing practices behind the scenes of one of the most meticulous institutions in the country. Auction houses revised their projections. The next time a comparable coin appeared, worn, less defined, it sold for over $9,000. Robert's coin, still tucked safely in its graded slab, had yet to see the open market. Yet interest never waned. Collectors debated whether this coin could be the first struck from the flawed die, a prototype of sorts for an error type still underdocumented. Forums speculated wildly about how many were out there, whether a matched reverse die could be traced, and if the mint had ever internally acknowledged the anomaly. As years passed, more specimens trickled into circulation. A few fetched impressive sums, but Roberts remained the benchmark. Its provenance, condition, and early discovery made it iconic in niche numismatic circles. A coin from a year few would associate with anything remarkable had become a star. From a tin box in an attic to a headline in coin journals, the 1939 Lincoln cent with its doubled die obverse and reverse reminded the world that history often hides in plain sight. A penny, dismissed as common, had carried within it a secret struck by steel and chance, held silent for generations. Its value today? Still growing. But privately, many experts agree, in the right auction, it could command a price well into 5 figures, perhaps even more if the transitional die theory gains formal acceptance. A forgotten cent, born in a world bracing for war, now preserved as a testament to error, discovery, and the quiet magic of coins. In 1940, America found itself standing at a precipice. Europe was ablaze with war, and though the United States had not yet entered the global conflict, the distant echoes of chaos could already be heard in its factories, newspapers, and homes. Citizens prepared for uncertainty, conserving resources and stockpiling what they could. The U.S. Mint, meanwhile, carried on with quiet determination, striking coins that would soon move through hands across the country, from farmers in Iowa to merchants in New York. Among these was the ever-familiar Lincoln wheat cent, unchanged in design but destined, in one particular instance, to be anything but ordinary. The 1940 Lincoln cent was struck in 3 locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Tens of millions rolled off the presses that year, bearing Abraham Lincoln's solemn profile on the obverse and twin wheat stalks on the reverse, a tribute to the hard-working backbone of America. With such high mintage numbers, the coins were unremarkable at face value. But deep within the machinery of the Philadelphia Mint, something peculiar happened: a slight misalignment, a flawed die, an unnoticed anomaly that quietly slipped into circulation. Decades later, in a sleepy Arizona suburb, a retired postal worker named Gerald sifted through a shoebox filled with old coins he had saved since childhood. A lifelong habit born of nostalgia and mild curiosity, he often spent evenings checking dates, polishing surfaces, and comparing mint marks. Most coins amounted to little more than memories, but one, marked 1940, no mint mark, seemed different. The surface shimmered under the lamp's glow, not from polish but from an oddly textured sheen around the date. Gerald narrowed his eyes. Something about the number 0 in 1940 looked, echoed, like a ghost image. He tilted the coin, and then it struck him. The word Liberty showed faint doubling, not from wear, but from a mechanical process. His heart pounded, a mix of disbelief and excitement swelling within him. He rushed to retrieve his magnifier and compared it to 2 other 1940 pennies in his collection. Neither displayed this ghosting effect. That night, Gerald turned to online forums and coin guides, hunting for confirmation. A few cryptic mentions of a possible 1940 double die obverse surfaced, mostly unverified whispers among collectors. No major auction had recorded a confirmed sale, and even the most seasoned numismatists seemed to lack consensus on the variety's existence. Could it be that Gerald had stumbled onto something scarcely documented? He sent the coin for professional grading and waited weeks with growing anxiety. When the results arrived, the grading company had not only authenticated the coin but identified it as a double die obverse, one of extremely few confirmed examples. The doubling was clearest in the word liberty and in God we trust, especially the T and R, which appeared slightly shifted, as though the die had slipped before striking. Even the date held telltale signs, with the 4 and 0 faintly echoed in the copper surface. The grading alone would have placed the coin among rarities, but what happened next propelled it into collector legend. A numismatic researcher contacted Gerald privately, requesting to study the coin. His findings added another layer to the mystery. The die used on this coin bore identical characteristics to a set of misaligned dies discovered in late 1939. That meant Gerald's coin was possibly one of the first 1940 dated cents struck using an improperly corrected 1939 die, effectively making it a transitional error. Such a revelation transformed the coin from a mere double die to a historical oddity. It captured the fleeting moment where old met new, where a corrected process had not yet caught up to production speed. The coin wasn't just flawed, it was evidence of a procedural lapse during a high-pressure year, likely caused by overworked technicians and a looming wartime economy demanding greater speed and efficiency. As news of Gerald's find spread, the numismatic community reacted with astonishment. Some viewed it as an anomaly, others as the key to a broader family of hidden errors from the same era. A few began searching for companion pieces, coins with similar traits struck around the same time. Meanwhile, Gerald's phone rang weekly with offers. At first, they hovered in the hundreds. Then came the serious bidders, auction houses, private collectors, even museums. One offer reached $6,500. Another, whispered through a collector's network, was double that, but Gerald waited. The value of a coin like this, he knew, wasn't just in its metal or its minting, it was in the story, the history, and the undeniable uniqueness of what it represented. As years passed, its significance grew. It began appearing in articles and blog posts. Other examples were found, but none in as fine a condition. The doubling on Gerald's coin remained sharper, more complete, suggesting it had been one of the first struck by the flawed die before were set in. Numismatic catalogs began to list the 1940 double die as a distinct variety. The price estimates rose with each new publication. Coins in similar condition fetched up to $9,000 in private sales, while lesser-grade versions still commanded hundreds. Yet Gerald's coin remained unrivaled. The final twist came during a conference of die specialists in Chicago, where the coin was presented in person. Under close examination, one researcher made a startling observation. Not only was the doubling crisp, but a microscopic crack ran through the rim, consistent with a die that had fractured during early production. The implication? This coin might have been among the last struck before the flawed die was retired altogether. A beginning and an end captured in copper. Gerald's find had inadvertently rewritten a small chapter in U.S. mint history. From an overlooked penny resting in a shoebox to a rare specimen studied by experts, it proved that even the most mundane coin could contain a story far richer than its face value suggested. What looked like a simple 1940 wheat penny had become an artifact of process, chance, and discovery, a rare window into the imperfections that make history so unforgettable. Collectors now scour their jars and drawers for cousins of Gerald's coin, but few appear. The consensus remains that only a limited number escaped detection in that fateful year, making each surviving piece a testament to the unpredictable dance of pressure, metal, and time. While others faded, this cent rose to numismatic prominence, its value now estimated well into the five-figure range, depending on grade and detail clarity. 1 cent, born in the shadows of war, now treasured for the light it shines on a hidden moment in America's minting legacy. In 1941, the world trembled at the edge of chaos. Europe was deep in war, and the United States was bracing for the inevitable. Factories in Detroit churned out tanks, planes, and bullets under a growing wartime economy. And amid all the tension and transformation, the Denver Mint quietly did its job, producing coins that would feed the machinery of American commerce. The Lincoln wheat cent, already a staple since its debut in 1909, was one of the most common coins in circulation. But tucked within the millions of pieces minted that year, a handful bore an error so obscure, so subtle, that it took years to be noticed. And even then, its full implications would only become clear through the eyes of one unsuspecting collector. Among those countless coins, the 1941 Lincoln cent was struck in Denver with a total mintage exceeding 128 million. A workhorse coin. Meant to be spent and forgotten. But at the far corner of a quiet antique store in Minnesota, a man named Edward found himself staring at a tray of dusty coins beneath glass. A retired schoolteacher with a fascination for small histories, he was drawn to old currency not for its value, but for its untold stories. As he scanned through the tray, one copper coin caught his attention. Something about the D mint mark looked off. Not damaged. Not worn. But different. He purchased it for $2 and took it home, more out of instinct than certainty. That night, under the glow of his desk lamp, he examined it closely. The mint mark appeared to have a strange doubling effect. Not the usual wear or post-mint damage. It was cleaner than that, sharper. He turned to his collection of coin references but found little mention of a 1941 D doubled mint mark. That intrigued him even more. Edward posted a high-resolution scan to a numismatic forum. Responses were quick. Most dismissed it. But one user, an anonymous collector known only by the handle Die Watcher, replied with a cryptic message: check the reverse. Bottom left wheat stalk. Confused but intrigued, Edward flipped the coin. There it was. A strange, almost imperceptible die gouge running through the base of the left wheat stalk. Like a scar in the copper. It wasn't normal. It wasn't known. And suddenly, the coin stopped being just a coin. He submitted the coin for authentication. Weeks passed. When the results came back, they confirmed what few had dared to speculate. The coin featured a misplaced mint mark, a mint mark that was not punched in the normal position, but rather, slightly higher and at an unnatural tilt. In addition, the reverse contained a die gouge previously undocumented in the 1941 D series. This wasn't just a double die. It was a hybrid of sorts. A rare error that likely occurred during a hurried die replacement or misaligned repunching in the Denver Mint's chaotic wartime output. The graders added a note: specimen potentially unique. Recommend further examination by die specialists. Edward's hands trembled as he read that line over and over. Unique. In a coin where hundreds of millions were made, this one stood alone. He kept it in a velvet-lined box, tucked between a 1914 D and a 1909 SVDB. But unlike those, this one didn't come with years of lore. It was beginning its story now, and Edward was the first to tell it. Word spread quietly at first. A few dedicated Lincoln-sent specialists started whispering about the mispunched 1941 D. Others dismissed it as a one-off. Then someone found another. It wasn't exactly like Edward's. The mint mark was off-center but lacked the reverse gouge. That's when the theory formed. The Denver Mint, short-staffed and overworked in the lead-up to war, may have reused damaged or misaligned dies in haste. Some mint marks were punched by hand at the time, and human error crept in. These weren't just mechanical flaws. They were human fingerprints, flawed artistry on mass-produced currency. Auction houses began taking notice. Edward was offered $4,000 for his coin, sight unseen. He declined. Months later, another example surfaced, slightly lower in grade, with less visible detail. It sold for over $6,000 in a private online sale. That was the turning point. Collectors started checking their 1941 D cents. A few similar errors emerged, but none matched Edward's combination of misaligned mint mark and gouged reverse. His was still the cleanest, clearest, and sharpest. And most importantly, it was the one that started the chase. The coin's value began to rise, not in a straight line, but like a heartbeat. Each public mention gave it a jolt. Each new confirmed variety lifted its legacy. By 2021, professional grading companies had cataloged 3 subtypes of 1941 D mint mark misplacement, but Edward's coin remained the only one with the reverse gouge matching both placement and depth. Some believed it was struck during a very narrow window, perhaps even a single shift, when a damaged die was used before being pulled from service. Then came the twist. A researcher examining Denver Mint records from early 1941 discovered a brief note buried in a maintenance log: die rotation report. Mint mark punch misaligned on station B4. Recalibrated after 47 strikes. That number, 47, set off a wave of speculation. If Edward's coin was struck during that window, and only 47 coins were made before the issue was corrected, then the number of existing examples could be counted on two hands. Maybe fewer. That realization turned Edward's quiet find into a numismatic lightning bolt. A famous auction house contacted him, requesting the coin for a public event. He agreed under one condition: it would not be sold. It would be displayed. The event drew a record crowd. The 1941 D misaligned mintmark with reverse gouge was given its own display case, flanked by blown-up images and a timeline of its discovery. Young collectors stood in awe. Older ones nodded with appreciation. Even veteran dealers admitted they had overlooked the 1941 D, dismissing it as too common to hold surprises. Edward had proved them wrong. From a $2 coin in a dusty tray to a display under museum lights, the journey of this penny had defied all expectations. It wasn't just the error that made it special, it was the way it echoed human effort, haste, and imperfection in a time of national stress. A misstep caught in copper. A lesson that even the smallest pieces of history might carry the biggest stories. And today, in verified high grades, the value of this rare 1941 D cent continues to rise, currently ranging from $28,000 to as much as $91,000 depending on condition, provenance, and completeness of the error. All from a momentary flaw that turned a humble coin into a treasure.